Welcome to the SRS Podcast. I'm your host, Aaron J. Babyar, and I'm the Training Director of Support Raising Solutions. Whether you're a new ministry worker or a veteran looking to increase your competence and confidence, Support Raising Solutions seeks to bless you in your quest to be a spiritually healthy, vision-driven, fully funded Great Commission worker. My guest today is Steve Shadrach, who's a friend, who's the author of The God Ask, who really started Support Raising Solutions. And Steve, you have all sorts of different experiences and titles and things like that. But let's start with the most significant relationship in your life outside of Jesus. Tell us about your wife, how long you've been married at this moment.
Well, Carol and I will be married 27 years 37
I was
years.
going to say you lost a decade, brother.
This April, and we have 5 kids, and the 7th grandchild is on the way.
Awesome.
So we haven't applied all the verses in the Bible, but the one about be fruitful and multiply, we're doing okay there.
As long as you're getting one right, I think that's all that matters.
That's right.
Well, Steve, first of all, thank you for joining me again on another podcast.
Brother. Thank you.
And you and I started a conversation, and we just stopped it because I said, hold on, I need to record this one. And it had to do with support raising, of course, but we were talking about support raising meetings that sometimes don't go like what we might want them to, and sometimes even maybe difficult people that we're trying to sit down and meet with, and it sparked something in you and it sparked something in me, and I said, well, a minute, hold on, let's push record rather than rehearsing what we might say later on. So I'm going to kick it to you first. And what was it that started kicking around in your head as we were talking?
Well, I'm a people person, Aaron, and so are you. We like people, we enjoy people, we love people. The relationship kind of, trumps everything. Mm-hmm. And it really, we care about more than just their money.
Absolutely.
And so in these appointments, we're hoping to establish some kind of a relationship, or if we already know them, to grow our friendship with them. Mm-hmm. Sometimes people want to do that. Sometimes people don't want to do that.
Yes.
And when they just want to give money, but not have a relationship, I take their funds and I use them for the kingdom, but it can have an empty feeling to it. It can have I feel like I'm what is it when a soldier is just paid to go do the work there?
Oh, a mercenary.
A mercenary feel to it, and so that's one kind of appointment or relationship I've had that is hard sometimes. And then the one that you were talking about, I've had that same experience, is when they don't seem to express any warmth to you,
right.
any interest in you as a person or your ministry. They could even make you feel like you're some sort of a second-class Christian,
Yeah, I'll catch the listener up a little bit as we were talking. Steve, I'd shared with you before that I'm fully funded. I did have a small goal to raise less than $1,000 in the first part of this year, just for some operational needs for my ministry. And within that, I sat down with a gentleman recently who, by all accounts, anybody that would come across this person would say, well, hey, here's a guy that is successful in business, nice car, nice office, nice clothes, all that kind of stuff.
Claims to be a Christian?
Claims to be a Christian. In fact, it was a different Christian who referred me and said, hey, this guy might like to hear about your ministry. So I didn't expect a hug, but maybe a warm, warmer feel to the room, and it wasn't.
Why did he even meet with you? What was if you didn't catch his interest to really connect or partner? Why did he even meet with you?
Truthfully, he almost didn't, because initially I called and tried to connect with him, and he told me, well, I'm pretty busy. Why don't you call me back later? Maybe he didn't realize I actually would call him back later, but I did. Okay. And then the second time I said, yeah, I remember so-and-so's. He had said that he thought you might be interested. He's like, well, I will give you from 11 to 11:20. Oh. And I said, well, okay. And so I was a little bit like, this might not be the warmest thing. And so I showed up at his nice office at 10:55. And so I was ready to go, and he showed up at 11:20.
Oh, boy.
So I was there, I guess it wasn't just 15 minutes, closer to 20, 25 minutes before he arrived. And then when he sat down, Steve, it just wasn't warm. I mean, it was just, you could tell that he was fulfilling an obligation, but there was no heart sensitivity.
Yeah.
And I don't know about you, but I have had times, and thankfully not every meeting goes like that, but I've had a couple where I can't help but go, why am I here talking to this person?
Yes. And how did the appointment end? I mean, how did it kind of be?
Well, I mentioned to him your name, and then he told me he was out. No,
really, don't do that, please.
He said, "Oh well, I'm not interested in any monthly giving. It's interesting though what you're doing. I have a list of charities and things that on a rotating basis I will occasionally give to, so I might add you to my queue." And that was as warm as it got.
And so then shake hands, see you later.
Yeah.
No, there's not going to be any follow-up.
No follow-up, kind of get more information.
How did you feel as you were walking out of that appointment?
Well, honestly, I think in the past, I might have felt pretty defeated.
Yeah.
I might have felt like, what did I do wrong? There might have been a lot of, I don't want to say loathing, but certainly some
self-evaluation, as if I did something wrong here.
Yeah. And over time, instead, I've gone really the opposite direction with that. I believe I learned over time.
Just blaming everyone else.
Yeah, and just move into, God, what are you doing? You have no plan for No. No, I think the other side, Steve, and this is a shot in the dark a little bit, but I began to I don't want to say not question, but not worry about all the reasons why that meeting happened in the way that it happened.
Yeah.
Because who knows what God's doing in that guy's life? Who knows what God's doing even in my life? Maybe I needed a fresh reminder of what a big fat no sounds like. I mean, it wasn't that, but it was pretty close. Maybe I just needed to grow in I always need to grow in humility.
Yeah.
I don't know exactly, but here's why I don't feel bad when that happens. I do feel like I was at least faithful.
Sure.
I feel like in the limited amount of late broken time that I got with this gentleman that I did at least an adequate job of explaining my vision and ministry and inviting him to be a part. It wasn't warm. There wasn't a ton of rapport. I would have, but it wasn't there. I mean, the body language was cold. The facial, there just wasn't anything going on there. And so I was faithful, regardless of whether he's a yes, no, or maybe.
Well, for me, I've certainly had appointments like that, and over 36 or 7 years of being on support, you meet with all kinds of people over the years, and I've raised personal support as well as organizational and project support. So I will say that when you're raising your support for yourself, your own team, I probably tend to take that a little more personally when someone says no.
Okay.
Why? Well, I don't know. I think it's human nature it's easier to ask for someone else or something else. If they say no, well, they're saying no to that project or that particular ask. But when it's your own team, for some reason, we just say, gosh, they're saying whatever their reasoning is.
They're saying no to you.
No to us. I think that's a human, natural, common response for all of us, and we have to really go before the Lord and say, God, I don't want to take this personally. I want to open up my heart, and I'm just saying that, Hebrews 12:15 is one of my favorite passages. See to it that no one comes short of the grace of God, that no root of bitterness springs up, and by it be defiled. So really, I have a choice in each of those appointments. Even you did in the one you just had with this man. According to Hebrews 12:15, I have a choice. I can either get bitter at him, or I can extend grace.
Yeah.
And bitterness, it destroys me when I get bitter, and then I start defiling everyone else. I start poisoning everybody around me about all I can think about and talk about is through this lens of bitterness that I have.
And here you took a shower and put on nice clothes and everything.
Well, I do think that that'd be a good prayer to pray before each appointment, is to say two things, really. One is make the God ask. We talk about saying, Lord, you touch this person's heart.
Yeah.
And you guide them and direct them. But secondly, Lord, regardless of their response, I'm going to trust you. I'm going to extend grace to them. I'm going to walk away even if they don't want to be my partner, or it seems like they don't even want to be my friend. Hello.
Right. Yeah.
I am not going to allow that to in any way color my view of them or cause in my heart to be angry or even worse, bitter towards them.
Right. Yeah.
People have a hard time believing this, but I get a lot more no's than I get yeses.
Sure.
When I'm out there raising funds, the measure of a man is not how you respond when you get a yes. The measure is how you respond when you get a no.
So true. Although I do, honestly, I am concerned when someone responds really strongly to the yes. Like it's this great thing that they never expected. And I'm like, well, now wait a minute here. We got to have some balance. We got to have some balance. And yet your grander point there is it's so spot on. Because, man, that bitterness, that could go a long way. That could affect your next appointment. That could affect how you treat your wife, how you treat your kids. It might be like, oh, this is a bad day. It's like, no, wait a minute. It's not a bad day because of someone else's response to. I think
it'll also ultimately affect whether you stay in ministry, whether you stay on support.
Yeah.
The longer you go, the more temptation there is, I think, to kind of get cynical.
Yeah.
And to start, I've been on support now for 36 years, something like that, and I still have to go back to the Lord, go back to the scriptures. I read the God Ask periodically just to see if I still believe this stuff. Vision leaks. And so I've had some, even the last 30 days, I did some end of the year asks from a number of people. Well, I didn't get great responses from a number of people that I thought, guys that I had discipled, guys that I had, they either didn't respond at all to me or said no.
Yeah.
Well, that hurts. And it even makes you want to give up at times or lose hope or even get depressed. And it's just Proverbs 4:23, guard over your heart with all diligence, for from it flow the springs of life, Yeah. And then I'm thinking of Psalm 27, unless the Lord builds the house, those who labor in vain. And so is this a God thing or is this a me thing? Do I put my team together by the grace of God, or is it somehow my effort, my winsomeness and personality that's going to somehow kind of win them over?
Right. And there is a balance there, because when you are in a season of raising support, you want to work hard. You want to be in fact, I was in Proverbs 7 this morning and reading about, how the ant prepares and all that stuff. And I was thinking, I got to be like an ant when I'm out raising support. and yet the reality is the dependence is really on God. Like, I need to work hard, but the answer from people, I don't want to have that. I don't want to be too high, too excited if they say yes, nor do I want to be low if they say no. I want to be faithful in the process of, hey, there's a great commission thing that we get to be a part of. Yeah. God doesn't need us. We get to be a part of it. And part of that getting to be a part of it is we get to invite others into it. Yep. It's an open hand invitation. The God Ask, as I read what you wrote in the book, the God Ask is an invitation. It's not a demand.
Good.
And see, when you ask with expectation of the answer that you want, then it's not a God Ask. Then it's a little bit more of a demand, and I think that's partially why people sometimes are, there could be a lot of different reasons. I think that's one of the reasons people are a little scared or reluctant to raise support, to do a God Ask, because they assume that means I'm going to make a demand out of someone, and that's not really what a God Ask is it?
Well, I think our listeners, each time you have an appointment, each time you make an ask, each time you use a particular approach, it's good to step back and evaluate yourself. I'm evaluating myself right now by the particular approach I used here at the end of the year, and that I think was not near as effective as it could have been or should have been. Once again, going back to the principle, the more personal you are, the more effective it's going to be. And if I can get face to face with someone, and especially in those appointments, when, how do we do in those appointments? And I think that we just have to kind of settle ourselves into thinking that, into realizing that we are going to be the ones that are primarily asking questions of others. We're going to be taking an interest in others, their lives, their families, their past, their faith. Carol and I just got back from a trip, and we talked about this a couple of different times because we met with all kinds of different people and supporters. Well, we spent a solid week, town to town. We were involved in some ministry and conferences and things. But it seemed like we spent about 90% of the time at least asking them questions about their life and listening. And easily less than 10% do they ever ask back and take an interest in my life or our family or our ministry, especially our ministry. And so I think our listeners need to probably just resolve in their heart that maybe the rest of their lives that they are going to be the ones in those appointments and beyond to initiate conversation, to ask questions, to keep taking an interest in those people they're meeting with and having good eye contact, good heart contact, being good listeners, and whether they get any reciprocal interest or warmth or questions coming back, that's kind of a bonus.
It is. I think that it's a bonus, but it's also something I want.
I do too.
Like I want to build that rapport.
Yeah.
I was kind of excited to meet this guy, even though he stiffed me on an appointment before accidentally. It wasn't intentional, but man, I think that was the hardest part of the appointment for me is he was just cold.
Yep.
He didn't really ask questions, and when I asked him questions, it was one-word answers. And part of what prompted this particular podcast too, Steve, is when I said, I kind of drove away from that meeting going, I'm kind of glad that was a kind of a no. I mean, he kind of said maybe, he kind of said no. Like, I don't feel like I need to pursue him any further. Now, if he gives or he starts praying and texting me, that would be something different. I don't expect to ever hear from him again.
Yeah.
And I'm actually okay with that.
Yeah.
Because God has provided me with a wonderful team, and the little bit of support that I need to raise this winter, spring is it's small potatoes to
I don't know who it is you met with, and no need to tell me, but and he claims to be Christian, as many people in our country do, and especially in the South, we have to work hard to get them lost before we can ever get them saved, in the South especially. But I have found very few, even definitely born again Christians, really have a biblical understanding of giving. They have never taken the time to personally, inductively, thoroughly, objectively look at the Old and New Testament to say, what does the Bible teach about giving? And so here we are meeting with them, and they think the money belongs to them. They're going to somehow kind of dole out a few little bucks here and there to their charities,
Right.
I'm going to make a donation to my charity. You can tell even the language they're using.
Yeah, you really can.
And so they view it really as a horizontal relationship. Not even, I won't even use a relationship. It's a horizontal transaction.
Yep.
On their part.
Yep.
I've even had a couple of people like that over the years go, yes, I want to donate. Can you send me a bill?
Right.
Right.
A bill? Really?
And I started laughing. I said, well, bro.
I provided him cable also.
It's not a bill that I'm going to send you, But that's the way they view it. And so we got to understand that we may have a thorough understanding of biblical giving, what it means. But I'd say by far the minority of people we run into, even Christians, we can't expect that at all.
Yeah. If you're enjoying these podcasts and they're hitting on topics that you love, consider following Support Raising Solutions on social media for everyday biblical and practical support raising advice as you're in the process of raising your support. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/supportraisingsolutions and on Twitter at supportraising. Well, and that's a good, as we end this conversation in this podcast episode, I think you brought us to a good point that we try and bring up on most of the podcasts. And, you talked about really digging into the scripture and what does the Bible have to say about giving and support and stuff like that. And quite honestly, we have world-class training through Support Raising Solutions. It might not be the only support raising training out there, but it is pretty awesome. And I say that because I've had hundreds, if not thousands of people tell me this is awesome. And that's called the Support Raising Solutions Boot Camp. And if you as a listener have never been through an SRS boot camp, you're missing out. And I say that as somebody who was a failed support raiser for 3 years. But before I went through the training and read the book and dug into the scripture and had multiple aha moments. Because I had been to seminary. I didn't need to read all this again, did I? Yes, I did. So
very impressive.
Anyway, so that is just an encouragement to the listener. If you've never been through a boot camp, I just really want to encourage you to go through one.
One other resource before Aaron signs off today. I was reading it last night before I went to bed. I know it's not quite as exciting as a John Grisham novel. I don't know, but a new book by Scott Morton, one of our colleagues with the Navigators. It's called What the Bible Really Teaches About Money.
Yeah.
And he really is, to me, kind of the guru on the planet of really doing excellent Bible study on what does the scriptures teach about all these areas, not just related to support raising, but giving. And so I was reading his chapter on what does the Bible teach about tithing, and what does it teach about lifestyle and salary, and all these different areas. That's another resource that our listener might what does the Bible really teach about money by Scott Morton.
And Scott has been a guest off and on the podcast as well. He really is a trusted resource. And so, Steve, you mentioned the God Ask book, and if it's not clear for anyone, you wrote the God Ask. I know you had a lot of editing help, but really you wrote
kidding.
that. But I didn't get to contribute to it. I feel left out. But next time. But all that being said, I appreciate your contribution to the kingdom, and I appreciate you just even digging through this whole what about those meetings that just don't go so hot kind of topic and bringing us some perspective today. So thank you for joining us on the SRS podcast.
You're welcome. Good to be with you, bro.
Thanks for joining us for this episode. We would love to hear your ideas for future content. Please visit supportraisengsolutions.org/feedback to share your thoughts and questions. Also, wherever you download your podcast from, be sure to subscribe for future episodes and come back each week to gain more insight into the process of building and maintaining your personal support team.